The Puarenga stream is a major catchment on the southern side of Lake Rotorua. The Kauaka, Tureporepo and Waipa streams merge adjacent to the Waipa mill turnoff to become the Puarenga stream, which then flows through the Hemo Gorge, Te Puia, Whakarewarewa village and Ngāpuna before entering the lake at Te Arikiroa or Sulphur Bay. The Puarenga or swirling flower is recognised worldwide for the penny divers of Whakarewarewa, a cultural icon and pastime for many Māori children of the last century. A pastime that continued through the 1990s when it was realised excessive phytoplankton growths were occurring. The Puarenga was being poisoned via the Tureporepo stream through toxic leaching from the Rotorua district landfill and via the Waipa stream through dioxins and pesticides such as pentachlorophenol or PCP, contamination from the state-owned Waipa sawmill, a case that is still recognised as the worst case of water pollution in New Zealand's history and a par to the world's worst polluters. A strategy was implemented in the early 1990s, firstly to stop further polluting of the Puarenga and secondly to prevent continuing poisoning through leaching into groundwater. The aims of consents were to restore Lake Rotorua's condition to that which prevailed prior to 1960. That strategy included the Rotorua District Council, or RDC, creating what they refer to as a world leader in landfills. A high-density plastic, 2 clay liners, a natural liner and gravel cover the entire base of today's dump site. Around 60,000 tonnes, 85% of which is industrial waste, fills this landfill each year. Leaching of toxic waste into groundwater from the old south side landfill still occurs, and regular monitoring has reported minor toxicity. On the new landfill, the toxic flow is captured through a drain at the base of the landfill HDPE covers. At present, the toxic material is piped into the sewer to the wastewater treatment plant. There are plans to recirculate the toxic waste back through the landfill to reduce the nitrogen and ammonia in an attempt to reduce the $500,000 budget required to treat the nitrogen from the landfill. The wastewater treatment plant deals with the washing, cleaning, food preparation and toilet waste from almost 80% of households in the Rotorua district. This material contains organisms responsible for such diseases as typhoid, dysentery and infectious hepatitis. Also pumped through the sewage system to the treatment plant is industrial waste from places like electroplaters and meat processing plants, whose materials can cause serious damage to the treatment process. The treatment process employs sedimentation to separate solids. Solids that float are skimmed, and the solids that settle on the bottom are taken through a fermentation process where phosphorus-removing organisms are added, and a process of thickening, aeration and filtering happens to become compost. The first sewers were laid in 1891 and treated with septic tanks, the outflow of which went into the Puarenga River at the mouth to Lake Rotorua. Following an outbreak of cholera in 1935, the city began extending their sewage system for reticulating at the treatment plant's current site. In 1984, a proposal to discharge waste into the Kaituna River was rejected, and in 1991 it was decided to spray the final treated effluent, that is, the wastewater that has been through the nitrogen and phosphorus reducing processes, into the Whakarewarewa forest. The final effluent is held in 2 holding ponds above the Scion Research Centre. It is then pumped through a network of pipes into 14 of 16 blocks and sprayed into the Whakarewarewa forest 3 hours a day, every day. Spray areas have a 15-metre wide vegetated buffer zone bordering forestry roads and public tracks to reduce spray drift and to provide a visual and physical barrier to the irrigation areas. The idea is that denitrification in the riparian zones, that is Manuka, Kanuka and Mingi Mingi native vegetation and wetlands, would absorb a degree of nitrogen from the effluent. The irrigation system relies on the passage of effluent through both soils and wetlands. Unfortunately, nitrogen stores in the soil and accumulates over time, which does not make spray irrigation of effluent a long-term sustainable option. In 2004, incidents involving the unauthorised discharge of effluent into the Waipa stream resulted in the consent holder being served 2 infringement notices. In 2005, excess loading led to changes at the wastewater treatment plant to reduce the amount of nitrogen in the effluent from 13 grams per cubic metre to 5. In 2007, it was calculated that 36.5 tonnes of nitrogen was sprayed into the forest every year. 22 tonnes of it entered the Waipa stream. Along the Waipa catchment is the former Waipa sawmill, now called Red Stag. Red Stag inherited responsibility for remedying the leaching of PCP into the groundwater, which is still occurring. Between 1956 and 1989, the mill used up to 1,000 tonnes of PCP, a pesticide which preserves timber by killing fungi and insects that cause decay. The PCP formulations used in New Zealand were contaminated with significant quantities of dioxins, which are toxic and carcinogenic. These chemicals persist in the environment, enter the food chain and accumulate in aquatic organisms. The greatest concern was contamination of groundwater, which moved off-site into the Waipa stream. A groundwater remediation system was commissioned in 1994. This treatment involves abstraction of groundwater from interception trenches, then breaking down the PCP and dioxin in a Rayox plant. The treated groundwater is then discharged through the RDC wastewater forest irrigation network. Red Stag switched off their Rayox plant in November 2005 in preference to using UV light for treating PCP contaminated groundwater. The wastewater treatment plant aims to reticulate more waste from households in the Rotorua district, particularly Okareka, Tarawera, Kaharua and Eastern Lakes. The plant will undergo expansion to cope with the additional load, which will naturally increase treated effluent. To cope with the increased load, the RDC has applied for resource consent to increase effluent discharge into the Whakarewarewa forest. Reports indicate objection from Kaingaroa timberlands on the basis of saturation and ill health of the trees. Water is important in this region. As with many of our waterways, the Puarenga has significant cultural value. There are 3 marae along its banks, Te Pakira, Hinemihi and Hurunga o Te Rangi, as well as the internationally known tourist attractions of Whakarewarewa village and Te Puia. The mouth of the stream is home to a colony of shag, and its springs supply the world's best drinking water to the eastern population of Rotorua. Further to this story, the Rotorua District Council has applied for resource consent to spray into the Rotorua forest. On Wednesday, City News will be having an interview with Walton Lee, who is trying to get a ban placed on swimming in the Puarenga. And after the break, we have Stevie Lee Rowley here to tell us all about her experiences with New Zealand's Next Top Model.